And I think we have a couple folks who have joined us. And Mark, thanks again for coming as well. For those of you who've joined us, we're going to begin our conversation with Supervisor Terra Lawson-Remer in just a couple of minutes. If you have questions tonight, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Thank you.
What beach is that? Up in North County somewhere, I assume?
Encinitas.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I don't get up north too much, but which is too bad because I know that the beaches there are really great.
I mean, I love my new district. So I have Carlsbad to Coronado,
Yeah,
just fantastic. And I think I'm probably our only supervisor who could name every surf break from the Oceanside Pier to the tip of Point Loma. I think I'm missing 4 or 5 in Del Mar because I never surf there. But I mean, I grew up here.
Yeah.
So Point Loma is like very much my home. And it's just great. I love it. I love that. I moved to Encinitas in part because I didn't know the beaches here, but I knew the beaches really well. And, in the southern part of our district. So anyway, it's great. You should come up north. I go down south. And it's so easy. We have the 5, which is, it's so much faster. Tip of the district to tip of the district is now 30 minutes. It used to take me an hour to drive across my district because, because there was no good connector.
Mm-hmm. No, this is already making me want to ask a million questions. So why don't you just dive right in? Give us a little introduction, because again, you're a new county supervisor, and we didn't really get to know you during the campaign because we all voted for someone else.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. But so yeah, give us a little bit of history about yourself, and then we'll just jump right into all the questions.
Sure. So my name is Terra Lawson-Remer. I'm a 3rd generation San Diegan. And now I represent a new district. It's the San Diego County's 3rd district, and with the new district lines, it includes our coastline communities all the way from Carlsbad down to Coronado, as well as stretching inland from Rancho Penasquitos south through Mira Mesa to University City. I grew up in Mission Hills. I actually attended Grant and then Dewey Elementary. So I'm, some time in Point Loma. I graduated from La Jolla High School. And then I left home. I went to Yale University. I earned my law degree and my PhD in political economy from New York University. I was a professor for a number of years in New York. I was also a professor at UC San Diego. I have worked as a community organizer, working on environmental justice issues, and also advised the World Bank on environmental legal issues and climate finance, working on their climate finance facility. I worked on sustainable development for the United Nations, and was a senior advisor in the U.S. Treasury Department for a while as well. So I came back to San Diego to raise my family, because I know that this is just the best place the best city in the world, and the best community in the world. I'm just so happy to be home. So wanted to just take a couple minutes to talk about a few of my priorities. Really focused on just keeping San Diego County a beautiful place that's safe, livable, and thriving for everyone. So number one, just fighting to safeguard our beaches and coastlines and natural habitats and open spaces. As a surfer, I'm in the water all the time. So I'm acutely aware of when we have stormwater runoff that makes it impossible to paddle out and is polluting our beaches and putting us all at risk. So just keeping our beaches clean, as well as keeping our open spaces and natural habitats beautiful, is a huge priority. I'm a big hiker. I used to take kids on backpacking trips and spend a lot of time in nature. So that is one of my number one priorities. Also, really working hard to reduce homelessness and expand access to mental and behavioral health services for people in crisis. This is one of my top priorities at the county. really working to end carbon and smog emissions in our region and protect our climate. As I mentioned, I've worked on climate issues for a long time, for much of my career, and really fighting to make San Diego a leader in fighting climate change. I'm also working to tackle our affordable housing crisis. I think this is something that affects so many people, so many young people, but also businesses who are having trouble attracting talent to our region because housing is out of reach even for middle and working class San Diegans. And this is something that we have to take leadership on. And I've been working to put together a regional approach that brings together all the cities and the county to tackle our affordable housing crisis. Partnering with high tech and biotech and leading industries to invest in growing our local green economy. As a former attorney, well, I guess a current attorney, no longer practicing, I'm very focused on how we improve our access to justice in our criminal justice system and protect public safety. And then, I think all of us have learned a lot from COVID-19. So really working to strengthen our public healthcare system, building on lessons learned from COVID and advance universal healthcare. As a mom of a 2.5-year-old, any issue that impacts children and young children is really important to me. And this includes preschool and childcare, but also protecting our children and our communities from gun violence. And so I've been working hard on what the county can do to eliminate access to ghost guns, untraceable firearms, and make sure that we have safe storage rules in our community so that these guns, especially the proliferation of untraceable ghost guns, don't fall into the wrong hands. I've been working in my role at the San Diego Association of Governments to reduce gridlock traffic, fix crumbling streets and potholes, and repair aging infrastructure in our streets and bridges and roads that is at risk of collapse, but also make our roads safe for bikes and pedestrians. I'm a huge biker. I love to take my daughter on the weekends, and there's just so many beautiful neighborhoods and streets that we can't bike on. I don't feel safe biking on with her on the back because we just, we haven't done the work to make our roads safe for bikers, and it's pretty scary. And I think, we have just such a beautiful region and we can do so much better to make our community bike friendly and pedestrian friendly. So those are some of my big issues that we're working on at the county. I could talk more about specific policy initiatives or more about my background, but I just wanted to start with a brief overview and then open up for questions.
Yeah, no, that was great. And I'm glad you touched on homelessness because that's actually, one of the biggest questions we get a lot of times. You might know that a new homeless shelter was just put in an old Pier 1 Imports and Sports Arena, and we've had a county health facility there for a while, but we've seen a really big uptick in encampments and the homeless population all over the point. And if you could just expand on what specifically you're working on and maybe what new policies we can pursue, because what we're doing isn't helping people get the help they need.
I know it's a huge crisis, and it's definitely getting worse. So I think I'll just talk about a few specific initiatives and also then, what we're doing to build on more. So the first is we're investing in more outreach workers. There are county services, but there hasn't been any kind of concerted county effort to let folks on the streets know about these services or connect them to services. So the approach that we're taking is to start ramping up kind of like a caseworker approach, where instead of just expecting homeless folks to sort of somehow magically find their way into the right services, or else calling the cops and having them arrested and then they end up in jail, which obviously also doesn't solve the problem. We are instead sending outreach teams out into the street to connect homeless folks with the services that they need. And that also, of course, has its limits, which I'll discuss in a second, but I think is certainly an important part of the puzzle, so that we don't expect that people know where to go, because they don't. Another, I think, really important thing to acknowledge is how many of the people on our streets are aging seniors. About almost a quarter are people 55 and older, and a good number of those are folks who were on a fixed income and were basically crunched between keeping a roof over their head and putting food on the table, and they couldn't make it meet. given rising costs, rising costs of housing, and rising costs of living in our region. And so there's two things that we're doing in that regard. One is a pilot program that we're going to be studying over the next year to see how it works and if it's worth scaling up, where we're providing bridge funding, just a couple $100s a month to seniors who are low income, fixed income, at significant risk of being homeless, to try to keep them in their home. Because when someone's on the street, it costs about $2,700 a month to shelter them. So obviously it's so much better if we could, give someone $300 a month so they don't become homeless in the first place. It's the ethical thing to do, it's the moral thing to do, but it's also the economically efficient thing to do, by orders of magnitude. So I have high hopes for that program. It's pretty innovative. There's not a lot of models around that. So, we didn't want to go big on it right out the gate, because we don't know if it's going to work or not, but we've started with a pilot, and over the next year and change, we should be getting results back, and hopefully it'll be promising and we'll be able to scale that up. The other thing that we're doing is definitely looking at actually building more housing for 55 and plus seniors. We've just identified 3 plots of county land that we think could be on good sites for affordable housing. So that's a piece of it. And then also working on trying to put together a regional housing authority. And one of the things they'd be investing in is fixed income housing for seniors 55 and plus. So by the way, this is a long answer because it's a complex question. I think you have to divide the population into categories, right? Like not all homeless people are the same. So you kind of have to, one strategy or approach that's going to work for one group is not going to work for another. So I think that's the 55 and plus group. Then there's another group that is smaller, but definitely really visible, especially in Ocean Beach, Pacific Beach, Point Loma. A lot of young people who are often kicked out of their homes and end up on our streets. And unfortunately, a lot of those young people are members of our LGBTQ community who their parents kicked them out. It's really sad. And so we have just launched a new program at the county that's queer affirming housing, which we've never had. It's just never existed. It was always men, women.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, yeah, I've never heard of that before. So yeah.
No, it's never existed, right? People were just assumed. We've really had an approach to homelessness that frankly just didn't think through, how do you target individual populations in a way that's actually meeting them where they're at. So the queer affirming housing is for queer youth. And I think it's a small group. It's not a huge number, but it's a group that's not had any services except for essentially a few nonprofits who've done the work themselves to fill that gap, but it hasn't been government run or county funded. So I think that is an important new initiative that I'm really excited about and really proud of. Then we have another big chunk of our population, our homeless population, which are folks with mental and behavioral health challenges, right? And they are now also, many of them are justice involved because they're sleep in a doorway. They are pee on the street. Nobody knows what to do. They're blocking a business. So, you don't know what to do. You call the cops and then the police put them in jail. Now they have a record, but they're obviously not getting any help in our county jail because it's for criminals, not for people with mental health challenges. Yeah. So we have a new initiative we also have launched over the next year. We're essentially doing a needs assessment. What are the beds that we need and services we need for permanent supportive housing for people with mental and behavioral health challenges that are currently being routed to jail. And we've identified about 9,000 people in San Diego County that are being cycled in and out of jail that frankly shouldn't be there. They're there for very small misdemeanors. And it costs about $81,000 a year to put someone in jail. And it costs about $30,000 a year to put them in permanent supportive housing of some kind or another. So that is what something I think is a big part of the work is that gaps assessment, that needs assessment, and identifying that gap for our justice involved individuals. Most of them have mental and behavioral health challenges and are not going to just get back on their feet with, a jobs program. They actually need permanent supportive housing. They need services, and they need wraparound services. And they're not ever going to not need those services. That's just like where they're at and where they're going to be. And so that sort of cohort of 9,000 people is another group that I think we're moving towards a solution on. And then I'd say the last piece of it is that there is still more work to be done. We have just created a department of homelessness solutions for the first time ever at the county. And they're in the process of really doing like an entire like countywide needs assessment. Like what are the gaps? What are the needs? What are the services that are needed? I met with them this past week. I thought they hadn't gotten far enough. They've been working on it for a couple months. I said, this is not good enough. So I asked them to go back and gather more data. And so I think in the next 4 to 6 months, we should have a sort of a more robust plan that goes beyond the elements I just mentioned.
Yeah, hopefully a couple more pilot programs too, because I do love that you're willing to try it and analyze the data and then kind of go from there. So shifting over to climate change, what can we expect for a data-driven approach to our climate problems? Because, luckily us on the point, we have to worry about not only sea level rise, but also coastal erosion from everything that's happening. Our bigger winter storms are really, hurting our infrastructure, our drainage and stormwater is starting to back up. So what are points there, and where can we find the data to help us?
That is such a great question. I'm so excited you asked it, and I'm excited to answer that question. I just want to before answering it, I just want to say, I even appreciate your framework on data. I was, as I said, I was a professor for a number of years. And so, I taught public policy, and I in fact taught evidence-based approaches to public policy making. And I walked in this county, I'm like, what are we doing? Do we even know these programs work? I don't know if these programs work. It's a lot of money. Do they work? We don't know. And so I think that's my approach to everything is like, let's gather the data so we can learn from setbacks, and then also be honest when things don't work, and then scale up successes where they do. And so that's what we're really focused on in terms of our homelessness work, and definitely where we're focused on climate. So on climate, we kind of took a big step back. I got on the county board, and I was kind of appalled, right? So for the last decade or so, we've had a board where they just, every time someone asked them to do something on climate, they did less than the bare minimum. So then they had to get sued because they were not even in bare minimum compliance with state law, like not even bare minimum. So we've been in court, this county, prior to the new board for basically a decade for failing to have a climate action plan that was even like bare minimum. And so I took a look at that, and my first thought was like, okay, we should do a better climate action plan. And then I looked at it, I'm like, you know what? We need to do better than a climate action plan. Our goal shouldn't just be to sort of mitigate the bad emissions, which is what a climate action plan does. Climate action plan is like, how do we offset the bad emissions that we're putting out in the county? We need a plan to get to zero in San Diego County, full stop. Like, we cannot be a carbon emitting county, period. At all. And so I wanted us to go back to first principles and say, look, let's go talk to global experts. So as I said, I used to teach at UCSD. So I called up my colleagues there and I said, hey guys, I know you've been advising other countries around the world on climate plans and sustainable development plans, mostly in Africa and Asia, but y'all are in San Diego. You are at UCSD. So can we make a regional decarbonization plan for San Diego County? Because frankly, we are probably responsible for more carbon emissions than most of the countries you guys are advising. Plus we're here. And so they said, yep. And so they've been working on it for the last year and partnered with USD as well as some researchers up at Berkeley to put together a pretty amazing regional decarbonization and green jobs plan. So sort of a tripartite effort between USD, UCSD, and Cal Berkeley, looking at kind of what's our path to get to net zero carbon by 2045 in San Diego County as a region. Second, what are the policy levers that we need to pull? Like, what are our policy opportunities in San Diego to achieve those objectives? And three, what's our jobs plan? It's not just about carbon, it's also about creating good jobs for working families, creating opportunities to grow our green economy here in San Diego. And so how do we create a path to zero that also is a pro-jobs path to zero? And so that's what we've been working on. It's great. I'm very excited. So we just had a report back in March, I think like last week, with a draft, and there'll be another draft in June, and then coming back in August with a whole set of policy recommendations of what the county can do. And I think there's a few things to note. One, we really have focused on how do we draw on the best research globally, like not pie in the sky ideas. We're not going to sort of imagine we're all having like Jetsons airplanes to get to work, because we don't have them next year, and we need a plan for today, not a plan for like some imagined future. So we're really looking at the data, what we know is possible, and identifying trade-offs and what do we want to prioritize, because there's not a perfect answer. There might be like a cheaper path, but then we have to, build solar panels in like every square inch of our open space in San Diego County, which we do not want to do. So even though it might be cheaper, it's not good. But like being able to be very honest about and have a real honest data-driven conversation about what the opportunities trade-offs are. So that'll be coming back in August in terms of what the county can do. But also, I think it's important to note, what we asked our friends at UCSD, USD, and Cal Berkeley to do is to put together a regional plan, not a county plan, a regional plan for San Diego. So the county only has authority over some of those policy levers, right? Like the stuff that's in our jurisdiction. But we need the city to be a part of this. We need the city of San Diego. We also need Sandag and Caltrans and like all those small cities like Encinitas to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And so we are also going to provide technical assistance to all of the other jurisdictions to help them build on the recommendations in the regional decarb and green jobs plan, to implement those in their own jurisdictions, which I don't have power over, but I can certainly encourage you all to go advocate your own elected officials to make this happen in San Diego City.
Yeah, well, I'll be certainly excited for that report coming out in August. And I know one of the ways to lower emissions is clearly to get people out of their cars and biking, like you said. So, and we have an extremely active bicycling community on the Point. I don't know if like every Saturday, every Sunday, you see people all over biking around. And I know, like you said, the city is in charge of so many of those levers and improving our bicycle facilities. But yeah, how can the county and the city join together to get all of our bicycle facilities upgraded and safer?
It's a great question. Although, well, let me say a couple things. So first of all, one of our best paths is through San Diego Association of Governments. And the funding allocation for Sandag was set a really long time ago, and very little goes into bike lanes. And so I'm working to increase that allocation. Right now it's 2%. I would like it to be 3%, which doesn't seem very radical, but you're increasing it by 50%. Yeah. So I think that's one thing that is very clear. Like the money is there. We can move it. It's not very much in terms of percentage wise, but it would make a huge difference because it would, increase by 50% the funding available for bike and active transit. So that's one thing that we could definitely do together. And then it's also, so I'll just say that. And then I have a question, actually, very curious. I bike in Point Loma a lot.
Yeah.
In fact, on Saturday, I went to Cabrillo.
Yeah.
So I'm curious where you feel the biggest gaps are in our bike system in Point Loma.
I would definitely say the connection between OB and Point Loma, because you're supposed to kind of go down Nimitz, maybe that's the flattest one. And that's just absurd,
This is a very good point, because I did. So that's a great point, because
otherwise it's hills. I'm not going to bike up Narragansett,
I did.
You did.
I did. But let me just say this, You're totally right. I was going back from Sunset, and then trying to get back on the OB bike path.
Yeah.
And I was basically in the middle of traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, like there wasn't even a bike lane.
On the freeway. Yeah. And
Yep.
there's that whole exchange. Yeah. That Nimitz intersection is, and then, but you want to get over to the bridge. Cause we used to bike growing up from the skate park all the way to Belmont Park all the time. And and we would drive down to the skate park because that whole intersection and everything is just too difficult to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit of a fearless biker, so I just like go in front of the cars, but I don't think this is good public policy.
Yeah, be more fearless, be willing to die for biking. Yeah, that's not good policy at all.
No.
No. Okay, well, we just have a few more minutes. And I mean, I have so many more questions, but I always end with the same one. And you obviously know the point the best, but when you're in Point Loma, what is your absolute favorite thing to do? What do you love most about it down here?
Surf abs.
Okay, good. You know, every time I ask someone that question, they always say Point Loma seafood. So I'm glad that someone else knows that we are more than just Point Loma seafood.
No, I like all your surf breaks, but yeah, I like the walk. So it's like a double. You get a 2-for-1. You get a walk and a surf.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great. Is there any other things you want to shout out to our organization before I let you go?
I just want to say I'm really excited to represent Point Loma, really excited to partner with you all on whatever you need. Mark's on this call, so he's kind of the go-to if you need anything at all. We have a grants workshop that he can get you hooked up with, if that would be helpful. But I just really excited if there's community events that I can join, or really anything that I can do to be helpful. Paddle outs, I'm definitely there for that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, we have to get you out for the Village Lights celebration since, Greg Cox was so generous enough to give us that grant. And we want someone there from the county to see all the good work that we're doing to, like we said, activate our neighborhoods and make them more walkable. So we're really, again, grateful for that money, and we can't wait to meet you in person.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you do, because you're the real leaders of the community, and just excited to work together.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I am very prompt, and I will be super respectful of your time because I know there's so much more to attend to, and data never sleeps, as my PhD friends say. So I'll let you get back to it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your evening.
Bye.
Bye.